that many students assume, and their parents assume, that they cannot afford college because they see the sticker price. In fact, many of them might well be able to afford college because we have robust financial aid programs in regard to both merit and need. If we did a better job of letting students and parents know as early as high school, and certainly in college, how they can access financial aid. We also seem to be not doing a good enough job of taking advantage of federal funds that have become available recently. And so I would just urge, while I'm on your show and there are students and parents watching, that they look into the financial aid possibilities. Don't make any assumptions that you can't afford college until you've done that.
What you've done is remind me of an email that I got today about, it's from the mother of a student named Natasha, who's a straight A student at Berkeley, who is supposedly receiving 100% financing at the current time for her public education. And she just received a bill for $3,000 that has to be paid by March 13th. March 15th, the mother says, to protect her classes. So she says, as for me, I've got a little over 2 weeks to figure out how to come up with $3,000 so my straight A student can stay at Berkeley who's receiving financial aid.
Yeah, well,
what would happen to the students who are not receiving financial aid?
Well, that is a problem. We don't have, there isn't enough financial aid, there isn't enough financing for the entire system. But one of the things that may be occurring here, and I don't know the details of this situation.
I'll give you this.
I'd be happy to look into it, though, to check it out. But one of the things that occurs is sometimes students receive aid for tuition or fees. They receive certain aid, but there are other costs involved. There may be living costs, transportation costs, textbook costs, and those costs may now be exceeding the financial aid costs. It used to be 15, 20 years ago, the financial aid that student received could pay for 90, 100% of the cost. Now it may only account for 50%, 75%.
You know, the way I put this is, if I recall right, you went to Berkeley as an undergraduate.
I did, yeah.
And I went for law school and for grad school back in the day. And when we went to school at UC Berkeley, it was free. And
yes.
Free meant free.
Yes.
Now we tell kids it's free, but it's not free anymore.
Right,
and what that means is that we're either going to take fewer students or give them a lesser program or charge them more, or worst case, do all three. And more what we're seeing at the UC level and the CSU level and even at the community college level is that fewer students are eligible, they're going to get less in the way of a program, and they're going to be asked to pay more.
And it seems to me, if you're talking about the race to the top and putting the educational system back up to where it was as a model system, and you're talking about giving people more access, how are you going to do that with what you just now outlined?
Well, that's
a
why,
challenge.
and that's why I think the point that you all were talking about earlier about not setting your sights for the future based on the limitations of today is so important. Because, I mean, the hard fact is, if ever there was a time when we need to be investing more in public education, it's today. There isn't a state or a nation in the world that has grown its economy by disinvesting in public education or higher education. And if we're going to be successful, as I said at the outset of the program, filling those high-wage, high-skilled jobs locally, competing on a global basis, it's only going to be if we invest in our K through 12 and higher education system in California.
And one of the reasons that I wanted to address this subject and was asked for this committee for the master plan to be convened is because our situation has actually drastically changed since the master plan was introduced 50 years ago. The demographics have changed in the state. We live in a global economy. It's more important than ever that the students who come out of high school, go into college, graduate from college, can actually compete in a global environment. We need more than ever more than it was 50 years ago to prepare students with effective higher education. And so, as Joe was saying, when we shortchange access, I mean, the essential element of the master plan, the brilliance of what California did, was to say that every eligible student would have access to college, whether it was CSU, UC, or community college. I think we endanger ourselves now greatly to the degree to which that is no longer true.
Not only is it not true, but it's my understanding 200,000 students were turned away just in the past year. And so you're talking about empowering more students, giving them more access, while at the same time what you just now outlined means giving them less classes and giving them less access and giving them less opportunities.
And to go back to the question you raised earlier, Henrietta, you know, we ultimately have to depend on a successful K through 12 system to prepare those kids to go off to college at whatever institution is right for them. And if we've got more and more kids who are dropping out, and I think, you know, one of the sad truths is that as our data systems get better, we have to be more honest with ourselves about the percentage of kids we're losing to dropouts.
I think maybe 1 in 5.
It's a pretty
Maybe higher
sobering
than that.
number.
I think it's higher than that.
At least in some low-income
So
communities.
part
it
of what you have to
certainly
do is hang on through this tough time and make sure that all of these systems, the UC, the CSU, the community colleges, but the K through 12 system as well, while they're going to have to operate with less during a time when there is less, are not damaged in a way that doesn't allow them to come back. Now, for the institutions, for the long haul, for the state, that's the best you can do perhaps during a really difficult time. But the real question is, what about the kids who are in the system right now? Because, you know, they won't get to do 10th grade again. They won't get to have that opportunity 5 or 10 years from now when you hope that you can rebuild these systems and fund them adequately. So those are the two great challenges, is sort of, well, what do we do to make sure that we don't lose a whole generation of kids while the funding is inadequate? And what do we do to make sure that the systems stay intact sufficiently well so that when the time comes 2, 5, or 10 years hence and the money is there, we hope, that you can really bring those systems back in a way that restores them to what they once were and should be.
I think those are very important